Now, in the previous videos, we have looked at both constants and variables within Go. In this video, we're going to be taking it a step further and looking at how we can perform conditional actions based on the values of those variables. Okay, so let's imagine we were building an application that decided whether or not a customer could access a fairground ride within an amusement park. Now, we would be storing their height in a variable, so let's do customer height, and let's store this as a type of int, and we'll set it to 160. Now, using if statements, we could do something like this. So if the customer height is greater than or equal to 150, then we could do print line can access ride. Now, we could use a second if statement to check if they are less than 150. However, a better approach would be to use the else conditional and say else print line customer is too small. Okay, so we have a basic if statement here, which basically allows people to access rides if they are greater than or equal to 150 centimeters in height. Otherwise, we deny them access by saying the customer is too small. Cool, so let's open up the terminal and try and run this using Go run main.go. And as you can see, that the can access ride print statement has been executed. And this is because the statement that we've got here has been evaluated as true, and thus the body of this if statement will then be executed. Now, if we were to update the value of customer height so that this expression was no longer evaluated to true, then our else block here will be executed. So I've changed this to 140. Let's validate this assumption by going into the terminal and go run main.go. And as you can see, yes, this statement here has evaluated as false. So it has then executed this else block and printed out customer is too small. Let's say we wanted to add another statement or another conditional with another block. We could do that by adding something in between here and saying else if customer height is greater than or equal to 120. Then let's say print line customer can access children's rides, like so. So how this works is when we're executing this code, it's going to first evaluate this statement here. If this is true, it will then execute this code. If it's false, it will then test the statement here. If this is presented as true, it will then execute this code and then exit from the if statement. Otherwise, if neither of these statements is true, then the else block is executed. So we currently have a value of 140. Let's go into the terminal and go run main.go again. And we should see that this one has failed. However, this one has evaluated as true, and thus customer can access children's rides has been printed out. Now, let's say we also wanted to check the height as well as the customer's age. Well, we could first capture the customer's age in a variable, and we're going to use the shorthand variable declaration syntax. So customer age is equal to 18. If we wanted to check that the customer height is greater than 150 and the customer age is greater than 18, then we could use the double ampersand syntax like this, and we could say customer age is greater than or equal to 18, then they can access the ride. So in order for this if block to be executed and they can access the ride, both of these statements is going to have to evaluate as true. If we only cared about one of these conditions being met, then we could change this logical AND operator to a logical OR operator by using the double pipe character like so. And this means that this print line statement will be executed if the customer height is greater than or equal to 150 or the customer age is greater than or equal to 18. So if we were to validate this, let's go into the terminal, go run main.go. And as you can see, the customer height does not meet this first statement. This does not evaluate as true. However, the customer age is indeed greater than or equal to 18. Thus, this if statement block is then executed. Now, in the last video, we covered the topic of if statements in Go, and we created an application that allows us to check to see if a customer height or a customer age is above a certain amount. In this case, it was 150 or 18, and then they could access all of the rides. Otherwise, if they were only above the height of 120, then they could access the children's rides. Now, in this video, we're going to clean this code up slightly and change it to use switch statements. Cool. So the first thing we'll want to do if we want to convert this code to use switch statements is to switch without an expression. So we can do switch and then open curly brace, and then we can set out the cases that we wish to execute upon. So the first case is going to be whether or not a customer height is greater than or equal to 150, or the customer age is greater than or equal to 18. Then we want to do print line, can access ride. In the case that the customer height is greater than 120, then print line can access children's rides. And then we can use what is called the default case to then catch all other instances that don't meet the criteria for the original two cases that we've got here. And in this case, we want to do print line cannot access rides. Cool. So let's comment out the existing if statement, and let's try and run this by doing go run main.go. And as you can see, it's printed out that we can access the ride. And this is because the age of our customer is greater than or equal to 18. Now, practically speaking, there isn't much of a difference between the two if-else statements that we have here and the switch case that we've got up here. However, as our application tends to grow in complexity, having a switch statement is preferential, as it allows us to more easily reason with the code that we are developing. Now, aside from replacing a complicated if-else statement with a switch that has no expression, we can also switch based on the output of an expression. Now, one of the cool examples from the tour of Golang is switching based on the operating system. So let's implement that now. Now we can assign the variable operating system to equal runtime.go operating system, like so. And then we can switch based on the value of that operating system variable. So in the case that this is equal to Darwin, then we want to do print line OS X. In the case that we are on Linux, print line Linux machine, and the default case. So if you're on Windows, then print line something else, like so. Cool. Now, one thing that we have not yet covered is the use of the standard library and the packages within that standard library. Now, I'm going to cover this more in more detail in a future video. However, for now, you'll note that at the top, we have now added an import to the runtime package. Now, this import is going to be crucial for the code to work, so please make sure that if you're following along, you've added this import at the top. Cool. So let's go down into the terminal and try and run this application now. So go run main.go. As you can see, it's printed out from our original switch statement, and then the second switch statement has then been executed. So it's assigned the variable string OS to equal the package runtime.go operating system string, and then based on the value of that operating system string, we then switch. Cool. So in this video, we have looked at the switch statement in Go, and we've covered how we can replace complicated if-else statements with a stateless or an expressionless switch statement. And we've also looked at how we can switch based on the value of a variable.